about Southern Europe. So we're going to keep it around the Mediterranean Sea today. So we're going to talk about some of these countries that are green. So Portugal, Spain. Talked about France the other day, but we'll talk about Italy and Greece and Andorra, which is right here, and we'll talk about them as well. So quite a bit of different array of cultures going through here. So lots to talk about. Okay, so the people. So the Italians come from the ancient Etruscans and the Romans, and even some ancient Greeks who had settled as because the Greeks spread out in different colonies, and Italy was definitely a place that they went. So they sit on the Italian peninsula. The Spanish are the Iberians. So this right here is known as the Iberian Peninsula. So these are people, prehistoric people, who the Spanish are descended from. The Andorrans are Catalans, and they actually speak Catalan. So Andorra sits right here. This is in the Pyrenees Mountains, right between France and Spain there. And then the Greeks are from the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, and then the Portuguese are a homogenous mix of like different European groups. The most populated areas are going to be Rome, which is right here in Italy, okay, and that's where Vatican City is, which is the center of the Catholic Church. Athens, which is right down here, okay, in Greece, and then you have Madrid right in the middle there. That's the capital of Spain. Milan, which is up here, right there. Venice and Lisbon, which is the capital over here of Portugal. Okay. So, early history. So, there's two early civilizations that are basically going to lay the foundation of Western Europe. So, you have the Greeks and then the Romans. So, the Greeks are going to peak around 400 to 300 BC. And they primarily lived in city states and they were linked by language and culture. But they actually had, while they were all considered Greek, they did have like varying differences in culture. So, like, the culture of Athens, for example, was vastly different than the culture of Sparta. So Athens, they were ruled by a democracy, okay, and that was one where every citizen had a vote. So it was an absolute democracy. Um, but then Sparta was actually an oligarchy, but they had a king as well, and they were very very militaristic. So there was a lot of clashes between those two, um, and they'll fight a war about it and things like that. But then along came the Romans, and their peak is going to be from about 27 BC to 180 AD 180. And Christianity is going to eventually become the official religion of the Romans. Um, that was not long before its fall in the 400s. The eastern half of the Roman Empire survived for a very long time, and it became known as the Byzantine Empire. And its capital is in Constantinople. That's present day Istanbul. That's in Turkey. And then Germanic groups basically came in and took control of various parts of the Roman Empire, and they established separate kingdoms. So we talked about like one of those kingdoms was the kingdom of the Franks, that Charlemagne was a part of, and part of Italy became part of the Holy Roman Empire. But most of those places did keep Roman Catholicism, and Catholicism was really the religion of Europe in general. But Spain and Italy, still to this day, are still very, very Catholic. But Italy is going to remain fragmented for hundreds of years. So they broke apart into city states. So, like Milan, Venice, Florence. You had what were called the Papal States. So the Pope actually had his own territory. You had like Naples in the south, and there's all kinds of different sections of Italy. Eventually, those are going to be unified, but that doesn't happen until the 1800s. But in 711, a Muslim group known as the Moors are going to settle in Spain. So they actually came up through North Africa and they settled in Spain. And they were there for a very long time as well. So the Renaissance was Europe's period of artistic and intellectual achievement. And so this is going to start in Italy, in particular Florence. And this is going to happen in the 1300s. So this is when we see great works like this right here is The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, and this right here is the Sistine Chapel that was done by Michelangelo. So this one panel right here is called the creation of Adam, and this is probably the most famous part of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and that's where God is reaching out to Adam, and this where their fingers come together is the direct center of the chapel. But these ideas and art would spread all across the continent, like we talked about before. And then at the end of the Renaissance is going to be it's basically going to start kind of move into the scientific revolution, and part of that is going to be exploration. So Europeans began to explore throughout the world, and Spain in particular is going to really become a very big power because of this expansion. So Columbus obviously was the first to come over here, and he landed right here on the island of Hispan. Oh, sorry, that's Cuba. This one right here is the island of Hispaniola, where he landed, and he eventually, as we talked about with Latin America, the Spanish kept coming back, and they started to take more and more land, and they became very, very wealthy as a result of this territory in the New World. Portugal obviously is going to take control of Brazil, which is right down here. Okay, so in the 18 and 1900s, there's going to be dramatic changes in Southern Europe. So increased nationalism, nationalism being the idea that like we are Spanish, they are Italian. We speak Spanish, they speak Italian. We are different than those Italians over there. Okay, so and that kind of pride in being, Spanish or whatever. So we're gonna see that. We're also gonna see a lot of independence movements. So like Napoleon's gonna take control in France, and then he's gonna take his brother is going to take the throne of Spain. There's going to be civil wars. We'll talk about a civil war here in a minute in Spain. A lot of dictatorships. So all this is going on. So Spain and Portugal are going to lose a lot of their territory overseas during this time, especially when Joseph Bonaparte was the king of Spain, and the Latin American countries really took that as an opportunity to gain independence. Greece won their independence from Turkey, and then Italy is going to eventually unite in the 1870s, like I said before. The World Wars, so much of the fighting of the World Wars actually does take place in Southern Europe. Now, Spain will technically remain neutral, and that was really because they were fighting a civil war. But Francisco Franco, who emerged as like the dictator out of that civil war, was very sympathetic, I guess, to Mussolini and to Hitler. But eventually, they will actually ally with the Western democracies when Franco is overthrown. But Greece was ruled by a military dictatorship during the Cold War from 1967 to 1974. And then today, Southern Europe is mostly democratic, and then they are all members of the EU. Okay, so education and healthcare. So literacy rates are very high, above 95%. There is very strong support, government support of education, and is compulsory or required for all children. University education is very common as well, much like it is here. As far as healthcare goes, it kind of varies from country to country. Spain actually has more doctors per person than most other countries, but Greece has been less successful. A lot of that has had to do with their economy has really tanked in the last like 10 to 15 years, and so there's less people who are able to go get an education, and so there's less doctors as a result. But the governments fund all healthcare programs and provide other social services. So just much like Western Europe and Northern Europe, they live in what's known as a welfare state. Okay, language and religion. So the Romance languages, that's the language family that pretty much dominate the region. So these are any languages that are actually derived from Latin. So like Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, French is another one. Those are all derived from Latin. So those are considered Romance languages. As far as religion goes, most are Catholic. So Italy, Spain, Portugal are very, very Catholic countries. In Greece, however, they belong to what's known as the Greek Orthodox Church. So back in, I couldn't tell you what year, but back when, I guess about when the Roman Empire split with into East and West, there was a split in religion as well. So, the western half became Roman Catholic, so this is the Vatican here, and then the eastern half became Greek Orthodox, and this is a Greek Orthodox church here. And so it's very similar to Catholicism, but it's more, I guess, mystical, like mysterious than Catholicism. But there's been like movement and talks about trying to reunite. It's not probably not going to happen, but it is something that I know Catholics would like to do. But Italy and Spain do also have a growing Muslim population. A lot of that, like I said before, has to do with a lot of immigration coming up from the Middle East. Art and leisure. So the ancient Greeks and Romans developed basic architectural develop or elements. So like columns and arches, domes, and things like that. Um, so most of the greatest works of art come from Southern Europe. So these two come from the Renaissance. This is the Mona Lisa by Da Vinci, and then this is the David by Michelangelo. And then soccer is the most popular sport in Southern Europe, much like the rest of Europe. And bullfighting is a very important tradition in Spain and Portugal. And it is the national sport in Spain, is bullfighting. So, all right, this right here is a video that I convinced my brother was real. And I thought it was funny, and it's not real, but it's from The Onion. But I just thought it was funny, and it's kind of an easy way to remember where Andorra is. So here we go.
The State Department is on the defense in the wake of the emerging controversy over Andorra, which received over $3 billion in U.S. aid money last year. That funding has now been cut off following the revelation this week that Andorra is not a war-torn African region, as previously believed, but in fact is a very wealthy Western European country. With us now from the State Department is Deputy Secretary Paul Heffron. Mr. Heffron, how did this happen?
Well, it was a simple mix-up. Someone said Andorra was in Africa. It sounded right. We just kept sending them money.
I'm looking at a transcript here, and it is a meeting between you and Deputy Secretary of State John Negroponte. Quote, Andorra, where is that? You say it's in, well, of course, it's right by, what's it called again? Negroponte says, is it in Africa? And you say, yes, Africa, exactly. They're in a really bad situation there in Africa.
Yes, it was an honest mistake. I just thought that they're way across the ocean somewhere. Their lives must be very, very difficult.
Is there no way to get the money back?
Well, we've spoken to the government there, and they told us that they assumed it was a gift and that they're sorry, but the money is already spent. Mm-hmm. Apparently, it was very helpful in renovating their ski chalets and some public saunas.
Now, Mr. Heffron, I want you to take a look at this map the State Department sent over to us this morning and said this is the one we have been using. Now, clearly, you can see Andorra is not on that map.
Yes, well, we thought it was in that blue area there down below Mumbambu, but...
Mm-hmm. Prime Minister of Andorra, Albert Pintat, made a public apology at a press conference earlier this morning.
Every Andorran will remember your generosity and stupidity each time we ride in the pure gold baskets of our individual hot air balloons.
Well, look, I mean, there's probably hundreds of countries in the world, and it's very hard to keep track of these things, very confusing.
Who's going to take the blame for this?
Well, the Andorra people will take the blame for it. They know exactly where they are. They should have told us.
Mr. Heffron, we are out of time here, but thank you for being with us.
Okay, so I just thought that was kind of funny, just because a lot of Americans kind of don't know where things are, and which is why geography class obviously is very important. So anyway, don't forget to do your processor, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.